plates are one of my most favorite things to make. And there are definitely some tricks to get them just right and not have failure. So I'm going to share those with you today. So I know a lot of potters don't like making dinnerware, and I always found that quite surprising that some potters just don't do it, especially when I love doing it so much. And it's because I do some things a little differently that just makes it easy on me. So one of the biggest mistakes that folks make is their rim drops down during a certain time of the process. It just flops down. So I'm going to address those things today. So first of all, I am throwing on a plaster bat. And I think it's best to throw on a plaster bat or a double tempered masonite bat. And that reason for that is the moisture gets absorbed into the bat, so the base dries nicely. So I'm using 2 pounds of clay. This clay is extremely soft, not what I would naturally choose for dinnerware, but it's what I have right now. I've got really, really soft clay. So we're just gonna work with it, because one of the things you have to learn how to do is to adjust for really stiff clay or really soft clay. And you have to, either have a lighter hand or a heavier hand based on the consistency of your clay. And this is really soft today. Okay, so this is my left hand, this is my right hand. I think the camera shows it backwards, but I am making this little pancake thing I like to do. And I'm gonna take my left hand, the ball of my hand, and I'm going to push down into the center, and I can do these really quickly. Down in the center and slide it over. So this hand, my right hand, is supporting underneath the rib and moving with my left hand as I push the clay over. And then I'm just going to flatten it out a little bit, and then we're going to test the thickness. I think it's a little too thick. I always like to err on too thick. And then, let's straighten that back out. So I went a little too fast, and now I'm having to straighten that out. All right. I'm just getting that clay consistent again. I do that every once in a while. And so I'm just pushing clay down into that spot that I screwed it up, and I'm getting the edge even again where it transitions, because I messed that up. All right, it's not perfect, but it's close. All right, so let's take our needle tool down in the middle, and we're at 1/4 inch, and that's really where I like it to be. So because I had to rework that a little bit, now I've made it even softer. Not ideal, but it is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to take a rib, and I just want to get my plate nice and even and flat from the center to the edge where the rib starts. And the nice thing is, it just happens to be this way, but this rib is about half of the diameter of the plate I usually throw. So it's a good way for me to measure or to consistently throw the same size plate. The other thing that helps me throw a consistent size plate is I throw just slightly less than the size of the bat, and that also helps me get my plates very similar in size. So at this point, I've got a flat bottom and a short squatty rim, and we're just going to pull this up like you would pull any cylinder up. And one of the things you want to keep in mind is that this bottom spot where it transitions from flat to rising up, you do not want to get that too thin, because if you get it too thin, your rim is going to fall. That spot has to support your rim. The other difficulty with it is you can't have it too thick in that spot. You have it too thick in that spot, it's the last thing that dries, and guess what? Your center's going to crack. So it's this perfect little thickness, not too thick, not too thin, that you have to get. And that, it just comes from practicing and throwing it too thin sometimes and throwing it thick sometimes. And eventually you figure out where that sweet spot is. Okay, so we're going to stick the chamois around the rim just to get a nice pretty edge. And I'm going to take my little tool again and just make sure I got the bottom the way I want it. All right, and then you can flatten your rim a couple of different ways. You can take a rib and just kind of slowly push it down. A lot of times I like using my fingers. My plates used to be across like this, up and then out with the rim, and now I'm going across with a nice gentle slope. It's actually easier that way, and the reason I switched is because that's what's trending right now. That's what people want. They want this, you know, kind of just gentle swoop. So I've got my thumb underneath my rim over here and my hand, or I can take both hands, and I start from the center and I just slowly push it down, and my thumb is still underneath that rim supporting it. I'm not going to push that rim down too far, because you push that rim down too far and it's really going to fall. So here is one of the most critical tips. Take it off the bat now. You don't have to throw it to the level that you want the rim to be now. You're going to take it off, let it stiffen up for a couple hours, and then put it back on the wheel and flatten your rim out. It does two things. It keeps your rim from falling right now, and it also gets you a nice rim at the end, because as your plate's drying, your rim does this. It kind of comes up. So I would not put this back on the wheel a second time. The rim is going to be up too high for my personal taste. Take it off the bat now. You don't have to throw it to the level that you want the rim to be now. You're going to take it off, let it stiffen up for a couple hours, and then put it back on the wheel and flatten your rim out. It does two things. It keeps your rim from falling right now, and it also gets you a nice rim at the end, because as your plate's drying, your rim does this. It kind of comes up. So I would not put this back on the wheel a second time. The rim is going to be up too high for my personal taste. So it does two things. Keeps it from falling, and it gets that perfect smooth rim. For some reason, when you lay it down a second time, it will stay at that level for the most part, and you get just the right rim you want. The other thing I don't do is I do not run a cutting wire underneath my plate. If I ran that cutting wire under this plate right now, with as soft as this clay is, this rim would definitely fall. Don't do that. So I like these pieces dry on the plaster bat or the double tempered mason bats, and I do not trim them, and I never run the cutting wire off of them. They just pop off. If you want to do that, and that's fine to run a cutting wire, just wait until your rim can handle that cutting wire coming up underneath that pot. And you will have to make your plate thicker, especially if you're going to trim a foot. I don't trim a foot on mine. I just don't think it's necessary. So here it is right now. You can see the height of where it's at. And honestly, this is where I want the end product to be, is this shape. But it's going to rise, the rim's going to rise while it stiffens up. And so we'll come back and I'll show you how I lay it back down, and we will pick up from that spot. So we'll catch you in a little bit. Okay, so it's been about 3 hours, and these dinner plates are nice and stiff, but not anywhere near leather hard. So they are ready to get laid down. So you just want to put it back on the wheel and soften it up with some water, and then give her a push down one more time. And then I just like to clean it up and go over my rim one more time with my chamois. And that's about it. It's quick to do that. So I just want to show you the difference between the one that's laid down and one that has sat for a few hours, and the level that the rims are at. You can see how this one that hasn't been laid back down is starting to turn into more of a bowl shape, where this one is much flatter and more pleasant to look at. So there you go with that. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention. I know what the last thing, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is if you have like a handmade bat system like this one, or maybe even a commercial one where you put the squares on the inside, when you pull it off, you want to mark where you took it off from. So if I have a mark on this bat here, and then I put a mark on the bat that's on the inside, that's the same place, it's a good idea to do that, because otherwise your plate might be a little wonky if you don't get them put right back in your bat system the way that they were in the first time. So mine, it's not too bad because they're pour plaster made to fit these. But if you have a bat system like that, which I think more people probably will, then you are going to want to take that extra step. So that is it for today. Dinnerware, going out to some folks for Christmas. So there you go.